Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, February 24th, 2022 open session meeting. I'd like to call this session to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of agenda as presented. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Costa. Do we have any further questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is moving into closed session. The Kent County Public Schools Board of Education members, this board, Dr. Karen Couch, the superintendent, Mr. Dan Hushin, excluding Mr. Dan Hushin, and Gail Manley, executive assistant to the superintendent, will move to closed session under General Provisions, Article 3-305B, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, as well as any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals. Do we have a motion to move into closed session?
I move that we move into closed session.
Motion is made by Ms. McGee. Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Johnson. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll go into closed session and be back shortly. Good evening and welcome to the second portion of the open session. Today's date is Thursday, February 24th, 2022. The next item on the agenda is to report on closed session. The Kent County Public Schools Board of Education members this board, Dr. Karen Couch, the superintendent, and Gail Manley, executive assistant to the superintendent, met in closed session under General Provisions Article 3-305B to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, as well as any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals. This session was for information and discussion purposes only. No actions were taken. Personnel actions will be voted upon by this board immediately after the Pledge of Allegiance. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Buckle, would you please? Thank you. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is personnel actions. Dr. Couch?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, you have before you the personnel action report, and the administration recommends approval of the stated personnel actions as reported in closed session.
Thank you. The administration is recommending approval of these stated personnel actions. Do we have a motion to do so?
I move that we approve the stated personnel actions.
Mr. Johnson has the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Dr. Costa. Any further comments, questions? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you.
Oh, okay. We didn't take a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Like to have a vote, please? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the resolution. Dr. Couch.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, on Tuesday, February the 22nd, the State Board of Education repealed the emergency regulation COMAR 13A.01.07 face coverings in school facilities, pending approval by AELR, which is the Administrative Evaluation Legislative Review Committee. So on Friday the 25th, this regulation will be under review by the AELR committee at 2:30, I think the meeting is scheduled for. Should the AELR push the local decision back to the LEA, then me, the superintendent, can make that decision in terms of optional masking requirements. However, should the AELR push the decision back to the school board, then the school board would have to make that decision in terms of just approving my recommendation. So it is my recommendation that in order to be proactive and to cover all of our bases, I'm recommending the approval of a resolution by the Kent County Board of Ed on optional masking for our students and our staff. And I have I attached a copy of the resolution, and I don't know if you want me to read the resolution.
Please, if you could. Thank you.
Resolution of the Kent County Board of Ed on optional masking for students and staff. Whereas the Maryland State Board of Education promulgated a regulation codified at 13A.01.07 concerning mandatory face coverings in school facilities for students and staff in Maryland Public Schools in effect from January the 5th, 2022 through July the 1st, 2022, the mask mandate. Whereas on February the 22nd, 2022, the State Board voted 12-2 to rescind the mask mandate by March 1, 2022, pending approval from the Maryland General Assembly's Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review, AELR Committee. Whereas the AELR Committee is scheduled to hold a virtual public hearing and vote on the mask mandate on Friday, February the 25th, 2022 at 2:30 p.m. Now therefore, in consideration of the State Board's vote to rescind the mask mandate and the upcoming review of the mask mandate by the AELR Committee, the Board of Education of Kent County resolves that upon the approval of the AELR Committee to rescind the mask mandate, The Board of Education of Kent County will no longer require universal masking of students and staff in Kent County Public Schools facilities, and that wearing of masks by students and staff in KCPS facilities will become optional. And as noted in this resolution, the soonest that could go into effect is March the 1st, because that's when it was rescinded by the State Board of Ed. And it's all based and pending upon the vote and the final approval by the AELR committee.
Are there any comments, questions?
I just have a quick point of clarification. So if this gets approved tonight and the AELR committee votes to approve the mask mandate, rescinding it, this would go into effect right after it, correct?
It would go into effect March the 1st.
March the 1st. Okay, thank you.
Good question.
I had a couple questions that I kind of brought up with Dr. Couch before, but I just wanted to.
Ms. Sullivan, can you speak up?
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, sorry.
Hard to hear
Really
you.
hard to hear you.
I had a couple questions that I had reached out to Dr. Couch with about this, specifically about where masks will fit into any quarantine requirements that we have about kids returning to school, and then also about if we need to include anything about reserving the right to return to a mask mandate at our schools if we require.
Specifically, your question to me was whether we needed to have a clause in there about Kent County Health Department asking us to go back into a mask mandate. And my response to you was the Kent County Health Department does not have that authority to require a mask mandate. So there's that particular answer to that question. And the second one was about quarantining. According to the CDC, if you are tested positive for COVID, then you have to be out 10 days. But if you can return in 5 days if you wear the mask for 5 days. So it would still be optional to the parent. If the parent chose to have the child not wear the mask, then they would have to keep the child out for 10 days. If they were okay with wearing the mask, then they could be out for 5 days and then return and wear the mask for 5 days, and then they could go back to optional mask wearing at that point.
I got a couple, I talked to Mr. Webb this afternoon. So, first of all, kids are still going to have to wear a mask on the bus.
Yeah, I was getting, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Second of all,
And since you brought that up, let me just say real quick, the reason why, it's because it's a TSA
it's
requirement.
a federal requirement. We
Yep.
don't have, and I felt like Mr. Webb was pretty helpful, that, so I'm passing along what he said to me, that, important message is that masks will be optional, but they may be required in certain situations. Like you said, if a kid tests positive, they can come back after days 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 through their 10-day quarantine.
Wearing the mask.
Now, what allowances do we make for a student who's been exposed to a student that tested positive? Are they going to have to wear a mask? Are they going to have to quarantine? And
Yeah.
who's going to monitor? I mean, when a kid comes to school, how does a teacher or administrator know that they're supposed to be wearing their mask or not supposed to be wearing a mask?
Well, we have pretty solid records in terms of the students that have been quarantined and the ones that are tested positive, because they have to go through the nurse's office, and we do our own contact tracing in terms of that. So we would know which students would need to wear a mask, and the teachers would be notified of that.
So the responsibility will become theirs to enforce
Yes.
wearing a mask. We're lucky in Kent County that our numbers are so few.
Low.
I can't imagine trying to monitor this in Baltimore City or a large county. We collectively got an email this afternoon from a teacher who I thought brought up a good point. Masks, like everything else, have become so politically charged. How will we'll be on the lookout? Because some parents and students will still choose to wear a mask. And we've, been a lot of discussion about bullying. This is another opportunity for somebody to either be the victim of bullying or to use it as a tool of bullying. So can we make some sort of, I don't know, extra, reach out to our staffs, extra vigilance to make sure that this is not an opportunity for somebody to be picked on or stigmatized because they're wearing a mask, maybe because they have COVID. They're wearing a mask because their parent said they should. They're wearing a mask because maybe they're immunized, compromised. I mean, I just want to do everything we can to not let this be another opportunity to beat up on our students and
I
our
think-
staff,
Yeah.
because there'll be some faculty that also continue, well, the teacher that sent us the email said
Said
that
that she was
she
gonna
will continue to
continue.
wear it, and she will be sending her child to school wearing one, and I just don't want somebody to pick on somebody because of that.
And I think it's in vice versa,
Yeah.
because we can get it the other way. I'm wearing my mask, I'm safe, and you're not wearing your mask, so you're unsafe. So
Right.
I agree, having
And if
some
somebody
type
gets sick, it's your fault because you didn't wear your mask. Yeah, what are we going to, can we try to be proactive about that?
Well, my goal is to talk with our administrators and make sure that we're vigilant about that. I mean, I think that, it's just like anything else. We've been wearing masks for a long time. I think there are going to be a number of our staff and our students that are not going to want to wear masks, and they're going to be the optional ones. There might be occasions that they want to wear a mask. So I just think that we just have to be vigilant in terms of being empathetic either way, whichever way the student or the staff member decides to address this. But basically what we're doing is we're opting for choice. We're giving the students choice and we're giving the staff choice.
And I had something that I wrote, that I wanted to say as a parent to other parents about having that choice. And I wanted to ask, hopefully everyone can hear me, ask other parents to choose to still protect our most vulnerable. You may not know if a staff member, student, or family member is immunocompromised. To choose that, to recognize that others may not have your resources, and that if a child becomes seriously ill in Kent County, we don't have the means to treat them locally. And this would be a hardship for many of our families without access to transportation. I'd also ask that you choose to be kind, to remind your children to respect the choices of others, even if they are different from yours, to model compassion, and to choose to recognize that things are not back to normal. There are still COVID safety measures in place that need to be followed. So as a parent, I am asking other parents to make those choices as well. Thank you.
And all of this is subject to change in the next couple of weeks. The CDS is expected to roll out.
CDC.
Yes, CDS. What is CDS? Oh, excuse me. I know what CDS is. I'm in the newspaper biz for a sec. Yeah, the CDC is going to publish new guidelines for businesses and schools. So this is not an end.
It's fluid,
know?
yeah.
Yeah,
fluid's the
we're
word.
expecting, I mean, the word that's come down is that there's going to be some more leniency with regard to the CDC. What Mr. Webb and I talked about is, right now we said students have to be quarantined for 10 days and 5 days with a mask, 5 days without a mask. It could very well change with regard to the requirements for quarantine for those that test positive. So that may change as well. So we're going by the best information that we have before us at this time. And all of that can change, and it's subject to change by the CDC.
Any additional comments, questions?
And we'll continue to have additional, for those families that want masks and stuff, that
Oh,
will
we have plenty of masks, yeah.
be additional.
I mean, I can speak on it really quick. I think that student perspective, not labeling that is my opinion or perspective on it. I think that students are fairly 50-50 on if they want to wear a mask or if they don't. I think that there's probably more students who, after, if we are to approve this optional masking, I think there's gonna be more students who continue to wear a mask. As we move into more of the warmer months, we may see that number decrease. But I think that personally, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think that it's something good to put in place, especially since we see more students who, want to have that option to not wear a mask, especially as our numbers are decreasing from the spike. So I personally don't agree with it, but I think that kind of abstaining my opinion from that, I think there's a significant student divide, which I guess would be beneficial to have an optional masking mandate in place, or not mandate, but resolution in place for the students who decide that they don't no longer want to wear a mask.
Okay.
So,
Any- please.
go ahead.
I just want to make sure if there's any additional comments or questions, we address them here.
I really agree with what Francoise and Trish said, especially about, bullying and being tolerant of other points of view.
Yeah, and recognizing there is a responsibility that comes with having freedom. It's not just about whether you want to wear one or not, which is fine, but you have to be cognizant of the feelings, and this is not just about hurting somebody's feelings. This is about getting sick. So
Okay.
Well, can we, until that's in place, a lot of parents brought up concerns about children using masks in PE. Was that ever?
Yes. So after the public comment at the last board meeting, I had a conversation with Mr. Webb about the mask wearing in PE, and we made a decision to allow for students to remove their masks during physical education classes. And I notified the two parents that brought up that comment during public comment that change had been made.
Thank you. Okay, the administration is recommending approval of this resolution of the Kent County Board of Education on optional masking for students and staff. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution of the King County Board of Education on optional masking for students and staff.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson and a second by Dr. Costa. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone. I just want to make a comment before we move into public participation. Obviously, as mentioned earlier, this has been obviously a very hot topic. And I can speak for myself, and I'm going to take liberties in speaking for board members as well, is that, we have been listening. But as everyone knows, and we've, even in this resolution, have, based on COMAR and based on certain entities lifting the regulation, for all intents and purposes, our hands have been tied. But I'd like to thank the administration for being proactive in addressing this issue in our community. It's our hope that the AELR, which is the Joint Committee on Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review, will act swiftly tomorrow at their virtual meeting at 2:30, and that KCPS can move forward with lifting this mask mandate, making it a choice for students and staff. If they do vote to lift the mask mandate, as we mentioned to Mr. Buckle, this will go into effect starting March 1st. As we also talked about the compassion, the bullying, it will be expected that students, teachers, or staff who choose to continue to mask are not treated unfairly or harassed. And as Dr. Couch mentioned also, and Trish asked to clarify, the masks are still required on school buses. And that is a federal mandate. So I just want to be very clear about the action that we've taken tonight. Just want to thank everyone who provided input, parents, everyone along the way, as well as board members, student board member, and staff and administrators. So thank you to everyone for doing that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public participation. Ms. Gale, do we have public participation? We do not. Okay.
You need to fill out.
Please fill out a card. Thank you. Okay, just a reminder, the rules for public participation. Speakers should limit their comments to 3 minutes. Comments about the actions or statements of individual staff members are not appropriate for public comments and should be referred to the superintendent of schools or processed through available channels. If submitting written testimony, speakers are requested to provide a copy to the president. Please remember that this is an opportunity for the community to address their comments to the board. It is not an opportunity for dialogue. If you have any questions that need an answer, please contact the superintendent or write a letter to the Board of Education and a response will be sent back to you.
Elective surgeries.
Thank you, Ms. Gale. Barb Reed.
Good evening, President, Superintendent, board members, and parents that like to watch online these days. I wanted to take the podium to thank the parents who have come forward to express how resilient kids are. There's other viruses that could be passed around at any time of the year, so things like RSV and, flu viruses. So I really feel as if we need to move forward. I know I've taken this stand before. I even said I wasn't going to come back into it, but some of our parents here in Kent County have some resiliency because we need to model it for our children. So as we go forward, I hope the Zoom meeting tomorrow at 2:30, is that the correct time? Thank you for agreeing, for those of us that will be tuning in, that we can stop the fear-mongering and propaganda. I do feel like some of the statistics are skewed. So, we've raised kids, and I think we've gone backwards with just some of the ways you need to survive, especially education. I'm learning how much I can learn by just traveling and sitting down with locals. I feel like there's a lot that we've missed out from especially history and these world wars, and right now it looks like we're going into a war, and what has happened to the innocents. So I will be burning this when I leave here, and no one addressed this, but I'm hoping if I come down here again, we won't have to do this. I'm not breaking any law when I don't wear this. And I mentioned the Constitution before. There are what's called civil liberties, my God-given right to take deep breaths. So for different reasons, look at all the kids that have anxiety problems today. Mental health. I think some of the bullying stems from kids just being wound tight. I mean, some of these Facebook groups, the parents are unhinged and they're bullying. And the monitors, I walked out of this meeting last Valentine's Day, I was being bullied. My kid was being brought in, and he's been out of the state for 4 years. And one of the moms, I hope they look into her, because her kids are bullies. So I'm not mentioning any names, but some of the parents need to look at how they raise their kids. It starts too with the role models. So I know I'm up front, and some of you may find I'm aggressive, but pretty much I don't mince words. I speak off the cuff. I don't have anything recited. I speak from the heart. I'm passionate. And sadly, Navik, thank you for taking a stand that the bullying comes from both sides. So I'm not going to sit here behind any cliche. Kent County too, I just pray for it. Where are the worker bees? Folks want to step up and help the homeless. Well, people will throw money at, I'm going to work a shelter tonight, because nobody else does. We can't find volunteers. That's where I met you, Navik, a decade ago. It's still the same core people. So, and at some point, some of us just get tired. So thanks for listening, and hurrah to burning the mask.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a notification of our next meeting. The next meeting of the Kent County Board of Education will be held on Monday, March 14th, 2022. The meeting will begin with open session to be immediately followed by the board members going into closed session. The open session meeting will resume at 6:30 p.m. The meeting will be located at the administrative building in the boardroom, this room, located at 5608 Boundary Avenue, Rock Hall, Maryland, 21661. The last item on the agenda is to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Before we adjourn, I just want to give a reminder that the next Citizens Advisory Committee meeting is this Monday, the 28th at 5:30.
Thank
And
you.
it's open to the public.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Mr. Johnson has the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. McGee. Any further comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes and the meeting is adjourned.